Mario Kart World has released, but to mixed reviews. I personally have loved and enjoyed it, but I can see some of its more obvious flaws. Thank goodness one of these has been sorta fixed. Despite that, however, there's a good chance that Mario Kart World will repeat history and we won't see another Mario Kart game for another 10 years. But if that ends up being the case, then the next Mario Kart game would land on Mario's 50th anniversary, which would be the biggest anniversary Mario has had up until this point. That's half a century. There's no way they won't do something huge for that. So what better time would there be to give us a Mario Kart Ultimate, a game that could not only be the ultimate celebration of Mario Kart history, but of Mario history as a whole. Hello everyone, it is I, the Flame King, and this is my idea for the ultimate Mario Kart. So some things to clarify first. When I say Mario Kart Ultimate, you're probably thinking about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, a game known for bringing back every character and almost every stage. Rest in peace Rainbow Road and Pac-Maze. And as such, you're probably expecting me to simply copy and paste that formula. But I don't want to just copy someone else's homework, I want to do something new and fresh. Especially because A, it would be impossible to have every single track come back, even if you're willing to swap those expectations for almost every track instead, and B, I think there's something much more interesting we could do here, especially with this being a celebration of all of Mario, not just Mario Kart. And that starts with the playable roster. Now, currently we're seeing fans giving other fans a lot more flack for fan character rosters than we've ever seen before, and it all has to do with one point of contention: spin-off characters. This is an entire branch of the franchise that never gets playable representation in things like Mario Kart, but they totally should. These characters have a lot of fans and a lot of fan followings, which makes sense, especially in a franchise as good feeling as Mario. But despite that, there's a lot of arguing with fans between whether or not they ever will add these characters to spin-offs, with some saying that they're bound to eventually, and others saying that it's never happened before, so it's likely never going to happen. Not to make him the bad guy or anything, but I do suspect that Miyamoto is the one behind why we haven't seen this happen yet. Miyamoto is a great guy, but in his later years he's gotten weirdly strict with what the Mario franchise is and isn't allowed to do. This is how we got things like the new Super Mario Bros. Series, which stripped the Mario series down to their most basic cores, which then affected the rest of the Mario series. Yes, there are certain games that have recently gone against this, but right now it's hard to see how widespread this is gonna become, especially in terms of the spin-offs. But for the purposes of my idea and for this video, we're going to ignore literally all of this. We're building a Mario Kart game that's meant to celebrate all of Mario history, and by that I mean all of it. So I've been stalling long enough. This roster is going to be organized based on when a character was first added into the franchise. Case in point, the first three characters in the top left are Mario, Pauline, and DK. But here's where we get a bit crazy. Donkey Kong Jr. and of course, Luigi. But then I added a whole slew of characters from the original Super Mario Bros. With Blooper here as a newcomer. But then we have Shy Guy Ninja Birdo, and the first character to show just how crazy this concept is really going to get, Wart. This guy's an absolute loon! Next we have characters from Mario 3, including every single Koopaling, then Daisy, and the viruses from Dr. Mario. All three of them in one cart, or bike. Those will be here too. But why no Tatanga, I assume you might be asking? Well, just you wait. Anyways, some Super Mario World characters, and after that, of course, is Wario. Next, the big one, Donkey Kong Country. Diddy Kong and Funky Kong return, as well as Cranky Kong joining, and even bigger, King K. Rool. No Dixie because she wasn't in the first Donkey Kong Country. So if she is in, we'll have to wait till later in the roster. Next, Baby Mario and Baby Luigi in one cart. A complaint that most have had in recent years is how many baby characters we have. We do not need 5 different babies. Well, here we narrow it down back to the main 2, and even then they both take up one roster slot and both ride in the same cart. Or bike. Kind of in reference to their Mario Kart debut Double Dash actually, now that I think about it. Kamek finally gets unsnubbed and Poochie returns from tour, along with Dixie Kong, surprise surprise. But then the actual surprise, Geno. Next, some 64 characters, yes, including Metal Mario, Waluigi, and EGAD finally makes his debut. About time! And King Boo too, this time in his proper Luigi's Mansion design. Next I have some Sunshine characters, but finally we got WarioWare. Oh my. I added Jimmy T and 9V. No Mona? She just seems a bit vanilla to me, especially in comparison to some of my other picks on this roster. No Ashley? Believe it or not, she actually wasn't in the original WarioWare. Be patient. Toadette, who debuted in Double Dash, so she technically represents Mario Kart. And Fawful, the final testament of what this game is setting out to be. And Ashley, told y'all to be patient. And Dry Bowser. Next, for the Galaxy games, we get Rosalina, Honey Queen, and Luba. No Luma? Don't worry guys, it's coming. Next, Parabitty, the first enemy since the top 2 rows. Unfortunately, not a lot of newer Mario enemies have become mainstream, unlike the now more nostalgic ones, but the Parabitty seem to have somehow gone against this, so I want to commemorate them for this. Pom Pom, Nabbit, the Sprixie Princesses, Plessy, Cappy, Prince Florian, and finally, to cap the roster off, we got the Talking Flower. And I know they aren't Mario, but the Miis as well. It felt wrong for them to not be in Mario Kart World after being in Wii 7, 8, and 8 Deluxe, which all the more shows how weird Miyamoto's recent strictness is. But here's the complete base game roster. Emphasis on base game. What do you think? But on to the real meat and potatoes. Tracks. But it would be a bit hard to understand and appreciate those tracks without a brief look into what the gameplay would be. A lot of my gameplay ideas are more in line with what I talked about back in my Mario Kart 9 series, which I made before Mario Kart World was even announced. A bit of a recap of those so you don't have to go back, but if you haven't, definitely go give it a look. Not bad. But I want to have more dynamic tracks. Not necessarily like how the Tour tracks and 8's Booster Course Pass had alternate routes, but more like how Grumble Volcano collapses over the course of a race, but they don't all have to be a collapsing course. Tracks could flood over, traffic jams or construction work could open new routes. You get the idea. The difference between when I originally proposed that idea and now is that we're focused on celebrating Mario history. I think we should have gliding return and have it work like it did in Mario Kart World, but having a more freedom of movement like how it worked in Mario Kart 7. And I think rail grinding should return too, so long as the game isn't as parkour focused as World in order to allow for more ease of play. No charge jumping. If there's a rail, a cart should be able to easily hop on. Well, I don't know if we should stick with the new way of water travel, I call it jet ski driving, or if we should return to underwater driving. Let me know in the comments below. I honestly feel like both have valid options, but it's interesting to get a wide variety of tastes and thoughts. But the most important part here is the return to anti-gravity. We also keep the racers at 24 players, but I also want my teleportation idea to return. Tracks will not only have coins all about, but also red coins. And collecting 8 of them will open a portal that allows you to teleport a set distance ahead, with the distance you teleport being greater the farther you are from first. That way there can be a catch-up mechanic that doesn't rely on luck, unlike other items. Being in first will have the teleportation barely do anything, and the portal will stay open for a tiny bit to allow those behind you to also use it. Alright, now we can finally get to the tracks. I'm gonna have things return to what we did before Mario Kart World and go back to separating cups into the ones with new tracks and the ones with returning tracks. Nitro and Retro, if you will. The Nitro Cups will be Mushroom, Flower, Bell, Star, and Special, while the Retro Cups will be Shell, Banana, Leaf, Feather, and Lightning. 5 each, more than any base game in Mario Kart history. This is because 8 Deluxe is now overbloated thanks to its DLC, and Mario Kart World seems the same way thanks to its insane number of intermission tracks. Plus, Mario Kart World is likely to receive DLC as well. So having 5 Nitro and 5 Retro at launch will help Mario Kart Ultimate not seem so barren upon its initial release. I'll just show ideas for all of the Nitro Cup tracks on screen all at once and explain a few of them. First, I don't want to reuse any ideas for new tracks that I had previously come up with. Rest in peace, Junior Skate Park. May Bowser Jr. still get his own track someday. But secondly, I wanted as many references to throughout Mario history as possible. Mario Circuit, the first track of the Mushroom Cup, would have a typical Mario Circuit Mushroom Kingdom World 1 Mario kind of vibe, until you go through a pipe and enter a sewer section, to reference the typical second level of Mario games being underground, but also the original arcade Mario Bros. When you eventually come back out of the pipe, you'd be in a new Donk type of city. Only instead of Donkey Kong references, since this is a Mario circuit, there will be Mario references. A lot of these tracks you can kind of get their vibe based on their name and the image I used to represent them. There are a ton of levels from Mario history that get referenced. Subcon Valley for Mario 2, Origami Festival for Paper Mario, Star Hill is just a direct reference to Legend of the Seven Stars, and so on and so forth. But there's a few more I think I should specifically mention. Nowhere Swamp is in reference to the Lost Kingdom from Super Mario Odyssey. Mega World Forest is in reference to Giant Land from Super Mario Bros. 3. I couldn't think of too much else I could do to represent Mario 3 that wouldn't accidentally blend in with other ideas representing other games. Viral Panic is interesting because I couldn't think of too much I could do to represent Dr. Mario, which I felt was a must because I had the viruses as playable. I thought for a while and ultimately came up with this, Viral Panic, which takes place inside of a person with tons of viruses all over the place. Over time, more and more Dr. Mario type pills enter the track and clear out the viruses, opening new routes. I thought this would make for probably the most interesting Mario Kart track to date. Wonder Canyon is in reference to Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and as such, each lap would have a different Wonder effect. Fawful Factory is new and original, but I just thought it'd be fun to give him his own track. Plus, having the factory be Fawful themed means it wouldn't just be boring gray machinery. Gamer Dimension is in reference to WarioWare with different WarioWare type games you could go to, specifically making references to what I think is the most criminally underrated WarioWare game, Get It Together. Ludwig Palace would be in reference to this one level from New Soup U, and Frozen Volcano is in reference to Freeze Flame Galaxy, a Mario Galaxy reference that wouldn't risk stepping on the toes of Rainbow Road, which I honestly have no clue what to do with game design wise. I do know that I want the new Bowser's Castle to feel more like an adventure that leads up to a final boss, even though there obviously won't be bosses during the Grand Prix. Lap 1 will be leading up to Bowser's Castle, being in a volcanic wasteland, maybe with a bombardment from airships overhead, before Lap 2 enters the castle proper. And next are the retro tracks. I tried to focus on the importance of representing Mario history first, hence why tracks like DK Spaceport, Yoshi's Island, and Luigi's Mansion are here, but I also wanted to represent Mario Kart history as well, and have some pretty popular and fan-demanded tracks here, like Coconut Mall and Waluigi Pinball. And speaking of Coconut Mall and Waluigi Pinball, as far as I've seen, those two are basically the most popular and iconic tracks in all of Mario Kart, maybe aside from like Rainbow Road. And so I actually ran a bit of a poll on my channel to see, according to you guys, which of these two is more popular. And while I didn't get too many votes, drumroll please, the results show that Coconut Mall is the winner. Given this also only comes from 7 votes, and maybe once I have more of a following in the future, I'd be willing to come back to this and find a more definitive answer. But in the meanwhile, I really like this answer because Waluigi Pinball, as great as it is, nostalgia from my heart calls out to Coconut Mall. Thank you to everyone who participated. That's also why SNES Mario Circuit 1 is here, the first ever Mario Kart track. Yet, that's something I imagine a lot of people would hate, since it's also a pretty nothing track. Especially in comparison to its recent appearance in Mario Kart World, where it and Mario Circuits 2 and 3 were kinda stitched together to become one track instead of 3. But here in Mario Kart Ultimate, Mario Circuit 1 would be all alone. But here's a representation of how I'd modify it, making this corner right here similar to the corner from Mario Kart Stadium, then turning this into an anti-gravity section that would travel along the wall of those castles you typically see at the end of a Mario level, before being shot out of this gliding section. SNES tracks don't have to be flat, people. Let's get creative, just like Nintendo has done for several of the GBA tracks. You could probably imagine a lot more of how some of the other retro tracks I showed would go. I'm willing to leave that up to imagination, but you're probably wondering why I didn't have the retro track selection end with a returning Rainbow Road. There's not really even a returning Bowser's Castle. Peach Stadium, as cool as it can be, is a bit of a lackluster finish to such an ultimate game. Well, that's because of DLC, baby! And the DLC is going to be soft themed around Rainbow Road. Basically, imagine the booster course pass, but quality matches the base game, and every wave is guaranteed to have one of the previous Rainbow Roads. And with the promise that all of them would be added in eventually, this means that we would get a 9-wave DLC. Add in on top of that having characters being added in each wave too. I told you Tatanga and Luma would be in, but of course other characters would join in too. But that can all be explored further in another video. If you'd like to see said video, hit the like button to show me. This video is meant to be a bit of a smaller project. I don't have plans on doing more, but if this video can reach 100 likes, I'll go ahead and make it. You can also leave a comment down below on what tracks you'd like to see be added into the DLC, and I'll add it. Share this video with your friends if you really want to see that happen. Now, that's all I really have for now. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Keep dreaming.